In the practice of bodhicitta, the first thing that we can understand are the faults of cyclic existence. That cyclic existence is it's impossible. I mean, it's just ridiculous. It's not only flawed and faulted, it's a real pain in the neck. The amazing thing about cyclic existence is that no matter what you do in the material realm, in the realm of appearances, no matter what you do in samsara that arises from samsara and is within the realm of samsara, it's all going to come to nothing. It's just going to come to nothing, because anything that you accumulate, anything that you build, anything that you create, as far as you're concerned, you get to lose it when you die. You won't be able to take that with you. And so the saddest thing of all, and the thing that we have compassion about, the thing that we become mindful about, is watching someone who is no different from us. They want to be happy, just like we do. Watching someone spend all of their time pulling stuff together, accumulating, or not even accumulating, just setting up their little gigs, their little power things. All their little personality, blah, blah, blahs. We watch people that are so entrenched in that, so lost in that. And we think, well, generally, before we've had any training, we wouldn't think about it at all. We'd think that was normal. But having had training, we think, oh, maybe that's not so good. Maybe that's not the way to go. We might even think to judge that person. We might say, oh, that person is superficial. Oh, that person really isn't practicing a path. We might have a lot of judgment about that person, but in order to be truly discriminating and truly mindful, and in order to actually benefit our practice, what we should be seeing is, yes, that's what it's like here. Yes, that is the fault of cyclic existence. Creating mindfulness in the arena of practicing bodhicitta is like that. We have to constantly caution ourselves not to simply go down the road in the way that we ordinarily do, thought-wise, but instead to be in a state of recognition and awareness. When we see ourselves act in a superficial manner and just go through the motions of life, or think, oh, I've got to have this money or this power or this fame or this fortune or this car or this family or this whatever, all these kinds of things, instead of judging these terrible faults really even in ourselves or in each other or in other people, rather than saying, oh, that person is superficial, or that person is lost, or that person is dead, or whatever it is that we're saying, what we ought to be saying is, what a fabulous opportunity to study the faults of cyclic existence. This is the fault of cyclic existence. Literally, you should look at that person and you should go, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, because that's how it is here. What can I do to help? How can I benefit sentient beings so that that is no longer the case? And so it increases your bodhicitta practice, rather than taking it down by saying, oh, that person's very superficial. Or that person's just about money. That person's just about material. Or even, I'm just about money. I'm just about material. To have those kinds of ideas is not so beneficial, because you are not contributing to mindfulness. You are contributing to judgment. Can you see the difference? And you are not contributing to a state of recognition. You're only recognizing appearances. Big deal. Dogs can do that. I mean, really. Do something dogs can't do. Once in a while. So what we're doing there is just wandering in this circus of appearances, and we're continuing to practice that way. The idea that we have that is completely distorted is that we try to train ourselves by going, oh, you shouldn't think bad about other people. It's that shouldn't, ought not to, you know, that kind of thing. So we train ourselves that way, which is wandering in the world of appearances and complementing them with other appearances. Instead, what the goal is here is to develop spiritual discrimination, spiritual recognition. What you need to recognize is that this being that you see living in this way that seems so fruitless has the very seed of Buddha enlightenment within them. They are that. They are that nature, but piteously confined, blind, wandering in this deluded world of appearances, totally reactive, simply dancing through reactiveness. So there's no practice there. If we can begin to really push ourselves and demand of ourselves that we give rise to a state of recognition by applying this discrimination and mindfulness, should we begin to do that, then perhaps we are actually practicing. Then perhaps we're actually accomplishing something. It is entirely possible to spend one's whole life as a renunciate. You know, calling ourselves a renunciate. I'm putting this in quote marks. We can spend our whole lives dressed up like Dharma. We could spend our whole lives walking around with beads. But if we do not require of ourselves that we move further and further into giving rise to a state of recognition, we might as well be entertaining ourselves. Because basically, that which we wish to disengage, that deluded ego, that inherent belief in self-nature, that is on center stage. And that is what's happening. And so long as that happens, we are suffering, we are wandering aimlessly in samsara with no way to understand our nature, blind, deaf, dumb, unable, mistaking the 5 primordial wisdoms for our senses that tell us if things are hot or cold, big or small, so we can have them. Our senses that tell you if things are far away or close by, so we know whether to react with repulsion or attraction. Our senses that describe that stuff out there, so we can determine how we should feel about it. This deluded and continuous reality that we steep ourselves in, this is not practice. Even if you do it with the robes on. Even if you do it with your beads in your hands. It is awakening to the state of recognition that is most important. When we see deluded sentient beings, this is an opportunity. They become to us like gurus. This is an opportunity to practice. Have you seen maybe your parents? Well, they're not enlightened people, although I'm sure they're dear to you. They're not really enlightened people. They're not like living Buddhas. But we've watched our parents, most of us, not only age, and sometimes very painfully. You know, the aging process is not a comfortable process. Your body drops out from under you and starts betraying you. Your only friend, it seems, starts betraying you. So not only have we watched this process go on, but we've watched them suffer so much. Suffer so much. We've watched them try to attain one by one all the goals they were told to obtain, and work so hard. Sentient beings aren't lazy. Sentient beings aren't not trying. Sentient beings aren't just wanting to kind of lay around. Sentient beings are working very, very hard every day to fulfill their belief systems. Our parents went to work. They might have been, they might have been the worst parents in the world, but they went to work every day. They worked really hard. They went through all of the things I remember. I mean, I'd have to say maybe my parents were some of the worst in the world, but I did watch them suffer, and work, and beat themselves to death. And the grief that they feel when they look at what they've been doing and working so hard and it amounts to nothing. The grief that they feel when they do everything they were told to do and still life is, what happened? What happened? Now I'm old. Nearly dead. So we've seen this. This is not only true with our parents, it's also true with us. It's also true with all beings. These are not bad people. These are not evil people. The sickness here is ignorance. The sickness here is a state of non-recognition. The sickness here is the narcotic sleep called samsara. As a teacher, sometimes I've had the opportunity to bring a student to task, to say, look, you're all spaced out. You're working hard, you're going through the motions, but you're not practicing. There's no inner practice happening here. And the first thing that student will do is to get defensive. And the reason why they'll get defensive, and correctly so, is because they're dancing as fast as they can. A student will look at you and say, well, what the hell do you want? I'm dancing as fast as I can. In the way that I understand, I'm working real hard. Well, I won't argue that with you. Not for a minute. You're right. You're dancing as fast as you can. You're working real hard. But the difference is you are not practicing recognition. Even if you spend 2 hours a day practicing, and then you leave that to go live the rest of your life, that is still a state of non-recognition, and we are not truly practicing. So what's required here is a deeper understanding, a deeper awareness, a more profound grasp of the realities that we are facing. Once again, our habitual pattern is to say, oh, this person is doing that, and that person is doing that, and that makes this person this kind of person, and that person that kind of person. But the way to practice, and I invite you to bring yourself into a state of better recognition, deeper recognition, is to understand that these things we see are the all-pervasive faults of cyclic existence. That this person that you're seeing is like a bee in a jar. Just hitting the glass, boom, 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 boom. Does the bee know what's going on? The bee is trying to fly. Bees trying to do what bees know how to do. But being in a glass jar, like samsara, all it can do is bash its head against the glass. And there's no way for that bee to figure its way out. That is the condition of samsaric beings. And awakening to that recognition is really the only way that we can give rise to the bodhicitta, give rise to compassion. Because otherwise, we are simply being compassionate, which is acting compassionate, which means I'm the star of the show. We are still in that deeply diluted state, we're just acting differently. And acting is still acting. So, in order to really give rise to true compassion, one has to recognize the faults of cyclic existence. One has to be in a state of recognition. You have to break through that, how can I put it? Maybe you all have sensed this. Do you ever sense that in your mind it's almost like pudding? That there's like a thickness there? That is it your skull? I don't know. But there's a thickness there. There is a that makes us, we can't break through it. It's like we go through these sleepwalking motions and you lose days, hours, years. You just lose this time and it's that thickness, and we're just, because we already decided way back somewhere else that one of the goals in life was to get such and such, and in order to get such and such, we have to act thus and so. Once we decide that, we never think about it again. Not really. We just go and act like that. We never stop to reevaluate. That is the unique thing about our brains. It's something we really need to understand. Once you come to a conclusion and you conceptualize something, that's it. You act by rote afterwards. So in order to awaken to a state of recognition, or in order to begin that process of discrimination, you have to rouse your mind from going through these preset patterns based on diluted ideas that you were given somewhere early on that you've never bothered to change. If you don't change those, you will still try to attain the same type of goals, but you'll be wearing Dharma clothes and doing Dharma activities when you do it. If you got the message that you have to be a star, if you got the message that you have to be powerful, if you've got the message that you have to be smarter, if you've got the message that you have to be some kind of special person, then when you practice Dharma, if you don't go back and reevaluate that in a mindful and discriminating way, you will simply do the same thing with Dharma clothes on. With Dharma words in your mouth, Dharma attitudes on your form. And that is a non-virtue. Basically what we're doing there is to continue practicing sleepwalking. So this discrimination that I'm talking about, this mindfulness, is not like some sort of generalized euphoric state where you go outside and you go, I'm mindful of the Buddha nature and everything. That's not what we're talking about here. This mindfulness is like requiring of yourself, stimulating yourself, rousing yourself to rethink, to reassess, to try to give rise to some recognition of what's precious and what is flawed, of what is extraordinary and what is ordinary. We can equate the condition we are in ordinarily to be like drunkenness. It's exactly like drunkenness. Some of my best students, and I mean that best with a capital B, as in Buddhist. Some of my best students are recovering alcoholics. Nobody gets delusion like an alcoholic. Because boy, do we do that good. Recovering alcoholics have a wonderful opportunity. Because having emerged from the cocoon of constant chronic alcohol consumption and the craving and the response and that whole cycle syndrome, the recovering alcoholic has the opportunity to put aside the drinking and then go through the process of picking up one's awareness again and focusing it. They have the sense of knowing what it's like to do that for the first time. I've talked to many recovering alcoholics, and they always say, the worst time is the first time. The worst time is right after you quit drinking and you notice that you have no mind. And you try to get your mind, you try to get one going. You try to punch start it somehow. You literally try to teach your mind how to think. How to think in a way that does not always go back into the can of obsession and compulsion and desire. So that's what you try to do as a recovering alcoholic. But they have this magical understanding of what it's like when you first get sober and you get the difference between that sober state, even if it's a little raw and painful at first, and that other state. You get that you were constantly, that you were not functioning. You were not there. There was nobody home. You were being driven by craving alone. There was nothing else going on. Zero, zip, nothing else going on. There was nothing in your head but buzz. And the buzz got louder when you walked away from the liquor store, and it got better when you walked toward the liquor store. That opportunity to experience what that's like, to awaken to sobriety, is a fabulous teacher. Fabulous teacher, because it gives us a sense that all sentient beings are alcoholics. I mean, we may not be drinking, but we are wolfing down the samsara. We are high on ego. We don't ever want to get off that. If we ever one day spent as much time on our practice as we do on our ego, we would be changed forever. So having that experience of suddenly awakening to a sober state is not so different from moving from preconceived patterns, preconceived ideas, with all of their judgments and all of their reactions and all of their, all of the habitual tendencies of doing what you thought you were supposed to be doing. The difference, that would be like being sort of drunken or asleep or just kind of going through the motions. That sobriety that one attains when one begins to move into a state of recognition or begin to discriminate what the problems of samsara are. What is the difference between what is extraordinary and what is ordinary? What's really going on here? That state of discrimination is just like the very beginning of sobriety. And like the beginning of sobriety, it can be a little raw and painful. Like, if you can stay comfortable in the time and space grid where you are in ignorance, saying, I'm sitting here right now, so I'm not dead, therefore I'll never be dead. I'm sitting here right now and I'm middle-aged, therefore I'll never be old. That kind of deluded thinking. To awaken from that and to say, this is, I'm middle-aged now, and I used to be a kid before. Uh-oh. That means there's a progression happening here. Whoa, where's that go? We don't like to think like that. As sentient beings, we try to keep ourselves in a safety zone, thought-wise, don't we? We don't want to think about it. We look in the, one day, you look in the mirror and you go, wow, what happened to the flesh that used to be up on that cheekbone? And you look at it and you think, oh, that's kind of funny, when you see it happening, but then you immediately go, no, it's not happening. It's just, I had a potato chip last night, therefore I had too much salt in there, So we try not to think that any of this is happening, and we stay in our comfort zone. We literally do the best. We spend most of our calories trying to stay in this comfort zone. This is much easier, it seems, on a temporary level for us. In the same way that, let's say we were living in a terribly traumatic situation where there was all kinds of danger and all kinds of suffering, but something came on TV, a sitcom, one of those 30-minute jobbers, the one that starts with an event and ends up with happily ever after. They all do in 30 minutes. Don't you love that about sitcoms? I wish life were like that. But anyway, so in the midst of all your travail and suffering, you watch this sitcom, and for that short period of time, you're comfortable, sort of happy. You can laugh at things. It's all very comfortable. But like the sitcom playing, does it change anything? When the sitcom's finished, what happens? You still got your life, right? So it's like that with the kind of escaping that we try to do. We try to put ourselves in a comfort zone. We are so addicted to the narcotic, specifically, the narcotic quality of samsara, that we try to bring that narcotic state onto ourselves again and again. And you do. We want to watch TV, we want to do different kinds of activities that make us feel safe. We like to do activities that we can control. We like to experience little adventures that are completely within our control, where there are no surprises. And we call that amusement. We like to experience psychological, emotional events that are totally safe and totally controlled. And we call that relationships. So we like to have all of this going on, and we don't want to leave that comfort zone. What is that comfort zone? That comfort zone is this blind, dumb acceptance of the appearance of phenomena as being real, without any discrimination, without any recognition. We prefer to bring this narcotic cloak onto ourselves. When we feel that things are getting too naked, too real, pull up the covers. That's what we do. And we all have different ways of doing that, don't we? I mean, you know, some people like to do the domestic goddess routine, some people like to be workaholics, some people like to, do the fertility mambo, some people like, I don't know, it's all different kinds of things that we're doing. And we keep ourselves in that comfort zone, in this state of non-recognition. So what I'm describing here is, again, no matter what area of practice you're practicing in, and here I'm talking about specifically with bodhicitta, there has to be, you have to require of yourself a mental exercise, you have to require of yourself to rethink things, to reassess. You have to practice recognition. Do not wait for recognition to come. The mistake that most practitioners make is they have a magical thinking phenomena going on. They say, if I do this practice for 2 hours a day for the rest of my life, and maybe I'll take a 3-year retreat, maybe I'll do that. If I do those things, I will be enlightened. So it's like a magical charm. It doesn't matter how you do those things, or what you do after those things, or before those things, but so long as you do those things, you will be enlightened. This is the kind of thinking we have about our practice. What I'm suggesting is that that's not true. We achieve enlightenment when we awaken. There's a difference. You can't really say you achieve your enlightenment after you finish your practice. You achieve your enlightenment when you awaken. The state of recognition is the key here. And how you hone your mind, how you choose to use your senses, how you redefine, how you study samsara in order to recognize, how you study and learn to discriminate. This is necessary. This is necessary in order to achieve realization. It is part of the process of awakening. Similarly, we as practitioners think, oh, what I really want, I mean, I love all this stuff you're telling me, and it's all very nice and everything, and you're a funny lady, but what I'd really like is the nature of mind teaching. Oh, sure. What I'd really like is the nature of mind teaching. What I'd really like is some Dzogchen. I mean, give me that high stuff. You know, don't start me with the basics. Give me that high stuff. And we think that, and then what happens, sadly, pitifully, really, is that we get this incredible Dzogchen teaching, this incredible teaching about the nature of mind. And it becomes to us something else that we, I, the ego, have collected. Something as precious as a view of the nature of our Buddhahood, of the nature of our mind, becomes a thing that we hold, that I, the ego, hold. Becomes something I have, and it makes me even greater because I have those teachings and you don't. If we allow ourselves to practice in that way, by simply wanting that teaching and not requiring the recognition, not making ourselves go through the steps, we are dishonoring the Dharma. We might as well sit on our books. We are dishonoring the Dharma horribly. Instead of collecting great teachings from great teachers, it would behoove us, it would serve us better to look in the mirror, to observe our own phenomena. Because in order to discriminate between what is extraordinary and what is ordinary, what is enlightened activity and what is samsaric activity, in order to develop this mindfulness, we have to learn to discriminate the world of phenomena. We have to learn to discriminate appearances. That never happens magically. The mistake that we make that is so terrible, so painful, is that we think that eventually if we do our practice there's going to be an experience. That one day we'll do our practice and suddenly, oh, what's going to happen? Suddenly our aura will get big. or, you know, we'll have some kind of, there it is, enlightenment. And we're like magically changed. We even fantasize about this. I know that you do. You fantasize about other people seeing how enlightened you are. You fantasize about how honored you will be when they get where you're coming from. You're not alone, don't worry. This this kind of idea is completely the opposite, but from the kind of discrimination and mindfulness that I'm talking about when I talk about discrimination regarding the world of appearances. In waiting for enlightenment to come to us, we're actually practicing duality, you see. In waiting for enlightenment to come to us, in waiting for that moment when the Hallelujah chorus starts, in waiting for that, we are actually saying, I, ego, I am waiting for that to come to me. So in that state, it will never happen. In that state, there is no such event. There simply cannot be, because there is no discrimination and no mindfulness of the world of appearances. In order to engage in giving rise to a recognition as to the empty nature of phenomena, you have to work at it. To do the practice and just wait for this recognition is inappropriate. It should be practiced with every breath. It should be practiced with every moment of our lives. And not just our spare moments, but the ones that count also. How does one practice the recognition of the empty nature of all phenomena? One of the ways that we can do that is by pacifying reactiveness through a deeper, better understanding and discrimination. Reactiveness is an inner enemy in a very profound way. It's probably your worst enemy. It is the seat, the throne, the source of all suffering. It is really our reaction to samsara and our activity because of that that brings our suffering, that is our suffering. And it's all based on, like the Buddha said, our clinging to self-nature as being inherently real and the desire that arises from that. This reactiveness is truly the enemy. I can't say that often enough. Since time out of mind, we have believed in self-nature as being inherently real. Since that first idea of self-nature as being inherently real, we have spent every moment from that point on securing ourselves, establishing ourselves, making ourselves safe, and defining, most of all, defining ourselves. In order to define myself, I have to see you as separate. And all of the ideas that we have that come from that are truly samsaric in nature. Even as a practitioner, the idea that I should walk around looking very noble and very holy and very renounced, even that idea, although it may seem to be about practicing on the path, is actually about the samsaric clinging to self-nature as inherently real. So this discrimination that we practice has to antidote that very thing. How are we going to antidote that very thing? That's not so easy. Well, reactiveness, if you think about what reactiveness is, it is a perception based on self-nature being real, the perception of other, and the reaction is based on hope, fear, or neutrality. As a being, if I see you, I hope that you will make me happy. I hope that you will make me safe. I hope that everything will be okay. Or if as a being, if I see you, maybe I fear that you're going to be prettier than me, or richer than me, or I fear that you're going to be unkind to me, or that you're a danger to me. Neutrality comes after you go through both hope and fear, and you decided it's pretty well balanced, so I'm neutral about this. Neutrality is not wisdom. So when we have that kind of a reactive mentality, that is such a knee-jerk reaction to where it is automatic. There's never a thought that says, oh boy, now I'm going to react to this. It's when somebody walks in the room, you don't go, watch me react. When something happens to you, you don't go, watch this. Well, maybe you should. In order to apply the antidote to that, I have the image of these old-time paddle balls, these paddles with an elastic string and a ball on the end, you know? And the only thing that you can do with it is bam, 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 you know, like that. Our minds are like that. We are like that. Bam, 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 bam. The thing that's happening is that we perceive ourselves as being real and solid. We perceive stuff as being out there, and the only thing it can do is hit us. And the only thing we can do is bounce at it. And it's bam, 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 bam. Reaction, 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 reaction. Because we can't have a second where we don't reinforce the idea that self-nature is inherently real. Maybe we'll disappear. So bam, 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 bam. That's what we have to do, and it has to be constant. Or maybe time won't pass, or things won't be solid. Oh my God. So bam, 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 bam. To apply the antidote to that, we're told that if we sit and practice and do the visualization, that is an antidote, and that's true. The reason why it's an antidote is because you're not reacting to something that affects self-nature, but you are engaging in a visualization, giving rise to a deeper awareness of what your nature actually is. So that's a great antidote for that. But if you really look at the phenomena of bam, 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 and what it's based on, you can see that there is no spaciousness between the idea of self-nature as being inherently real and bam, the reaction. There's no space. The mind is just, it can't not snap back. Do you understand what I'm saying when I say that? It can't not do that. So to apply the antidote, you can't really decide consciously not to react. That would only make you neurotic. That is the nature of the beast as we are now. Or to pretend that you're not reacting. That would make you, well, you'd look holy, I guess, but you'd be a little weird. The way to practice is to try to get a little bit of space somewhere in that equation. To try to take a breath, give it a moment. How can you do that? I just said you can't control that. So how are you supposed to do that? The way to do that is to begin to recognize the nature of the phenomena that you're experiencing. When you go through this kind of mental and your mind is so tight and you're bam, bam, bamming, and you're in that deeply reactive mode, you have the power to do this. Animals can't do this. Other kinds of beings can't do this, but humans can do this. This is what's unique about us. We can stand back and we can say, oh yeah, that's just like me. I do that. Just that stepping back to observe the phenomena without going crashing into it headlong in total ignorance and drunkenness and denial. To be an observer, just for a moment, to watch the equation. Self-nature is inherently real, therefore, to watch the reactiveness, to watch the play that goes on there. This is an incredible practice, and it should be done at times when you're not deeply reactive. It should be begun. To practice like that, you have to start very simply when the mind is relatively quiet. Watch yourself looking at a tree. Watch how when you look at the tree is only relevant if it makes you feel good. Otherwise, what do you give a shit about trees? Could care less. But the tree is beautiful. It affects us. It's very healing. Pretty in the spring, shady in the summer, fruitful in the fall. Instead of being, king or queen baby on your own little stage, instead of doing that, perhaps you can observe yourself looking at a tree and watching how the tree is relevant as to how it affects you. Watch what happens when you watch the tree. When you look at the tree, just kind of watch that whole equation right then. At first, maybe it'll happen too fast and you won't be able to see it. But if you persist, you will get a wedge in there. You will get a wedge in there. Watch your mind. You've heard this so many times in Buddhism. Watch your mind. What we're trying to do when we say that is to give rise to a state of recognition, to be able to discriminate the nature of phenomena. When we begin to practice in such a way that we can get a little spaciousness in between the assumption of self-nature is inherently real and the reaction to the tree being only relevant to me, when we can get in the middle of that and observe that and watch that, there is a natural pause that develops. It's a very small pause, but as you continue to practice, it will grow. That moment of spaciousness will grow. Then you are empowered to do something that you couldn't do any other way. And that is get ready to start dealing with your emotions and seeing them for the empty phenomena they actually are. You know, we have all kinds of techniques for dealing with our emotions. We take Prozac. We go to therapy. We drink, self-medication. We suppress our emotions. Some of us are just champs at that. Oh my goodness, you just love to see people like that, don't you? We repress our emotions, or we divert them. We divert them into something else entirely, and then we're completely crazy. There are all kinds of different ways to deal with our emotions. But one way to deal with your emotions, if you're really going to practice this path and you're really going to treasure this idea of recognition and treasure this idea of practicing mindfully, you've got to watch the mind. You have to watch. You have to perceive the nature of experience. Perceive the nature of appearance. Perceive the nature of phenomena. So instead of suppressing emotion, diverting emotion, glossing up emotion, whatever it is that we do with our stuff, the thing to do here is to practice when we are very relaxed, so that when we are in a highly emotional state, we can begin to insert that same wedge, that same bit of spaciousness. It's not that you judge yourself harshly and say, God, I'm a terrible person. I'm just so angry all the time. I hate that about myself. I actually have a student that does that to herself. I just hate that about my... Well, that's a solution, isn't it? I just hate that about myself. So instead of doing that, you can simply observe. Observe like a mind that is calm like a lake. You're observing. That's all you're doing. You don't need to do anything else. Watch yourself in the equation. Watch yourself clinging to the idea of self-nature as being inherently real. Watch yourself assuming that everything else is out there, and watch yourself react to, with hope, fear, or neutrality, everything. Watch yourself also go into that emotional state, which is really only the elaboration of that original equation. That's all it is. It's just an elaboration of the original equation. Our emotions that we think are us, they're so precious because we are our feelings, and that's what makes us unique. That is bull hockey. Well, I don't know how better to say that. Instead, we have to begin to realize what these emotions are. They are just the continuation or elaboration of that original equation. Ego clinging, reactiveness. That equation in simply a more elaborate form. So in order to insert the spaciousness that is required, what we have to do is find a way to observe. So even when you're getting ready to kick the dog and throw the kid through the wall, when you're in that state, you know, I mean, technically speaking, it's very, very hard when you're in that state to do much about it, you know? Once you're there, you know, just wait for it to go away. I mean, that's all you can do. Once you're there, it's very difficult. But even if you can't suppress your emotion, and shouldn't, because that's not really the healthiest thing to do, even if you can't fake it and say it's something else, which so many of us do also. You know, we have anger and we say, oh no, it's over concern. Even if we're not able to do any of that, we, even in that roused, inflamed state, are able to observe ourselves. That is the unique capacity of human beings. Won't you use it? It's what distinguishes you from the rest. If there's anything that makes you special, that's it.
No.